Hey guys, thank you so much for clicking on this video and welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Dave and I'm so honored to have you here and so grateful to be able to share what I'm going to share with you today, which is a little bit of just kind of a quick off-the-cuff riff about about microdosing and about what I've been learning and what I've been experiencing with my own self-experimentation with microdosing. So let's go ahead and get into it. Before we do, I should probably say really quick that this video is intended more as inspiration or as kind of no comparison with other YouTubers out there who are also doing similar kind of work. This is not meant to be a definitive take. This is not meant to be a how to do this video, so this is not instructional. This is just a kind of, here are my takeaways. So let me go ahead and share what I've been up to, and hopefully there's something exciting and it's inspiring here for you, which I think there should be, because honestly, I think there's so much potential here. This has been blowing my mind. So let's go ahead and get into it. So I have been playing with this protocol that I'm kind of developing right now, which is using microdosing, ideally psilocybin, but could be any psychedelic, combined with certain self-hypnosis techniques to kind of accelerate a personal change kind of path, or a personal, a personal healing path or a spiritual growth path, to kind of accelerate our ability to tap into the best in ourselves and to heal these patterns in our lives and in our minds and in our emotions that we want to release and let go of, and replace them with ones that we would rather embody, that we know are closer to our truth, closer to the best of who we are. And I know that this is possible. This is the work I do anyways. And so for me, the curiosity has been, how does, a microdose accelerate or accentuate or change that process of personal healing and personal growth? And so the idea that I had was to combine the two. And I thought what I would do is I would start with one particular issue of my own, work on myself, and do what would amount to maybe 3 or 4 sessions. So I ended up doing 4 sessions and see how I felt at the end of it. And so basically what I did is I chose one issue. In this particular case, it was social anxiety. And what I did was just kind of subjectively quantify, like, when I go out and I'm interacting socially, where do I think, from 1 to 10, how anxious do I feel? And how anxious do I feel before, when I'm anticipating going out? How anxious do I feel during, when I'm out there actually interacting with new people and with people I maybe don't know that well and don't feel that comfortable around? And then afterwards, how do I feel I did? So how self-critical am I? How how uncomfortable am I post experience about it? And overall, what's kind of my rating in terms of how much anxiety I have? And so I kind of did this over 4 sessions. And what I ended up doing was, each day that I would microdose, I would spend half an hour doing some of this work on this particular issue. And then I would kind of get at as much change as I could in that half hour. And then I would go out, go about my day. Then I would take a day or a few days off in between microdoses. So I wasn't necessarily doing a back-to-back microdose. And the idea was to see what happens, as this kind of work integrates into my neurology, into my mind, into my body over a few days. How do I feel? And then do the same thing again, do the same thing again. And so here's what I found. I would say before I started, I probably had social anxiety at somewhere between a 6 to an 8. So, maybe on a good day, even maybe like a 5. So there would always be a moderate level of stress internally that I would have when I would go out. I would go to maybe a coffee shop, or I'd interact with strangers in town, or I would do whatever I needed to do. And I would just kind of have this kind of medium level of stress about it. And then, some days it would be worse, it'd be kind of like a 6. And then on really bad days, maybe I was really tired, or I was just, feeling triggered about some other thing or whatever else. It might be up to like an 8, right? So I would have some pretty intense social anxiety. Not always, but often. And what I found after the first session is it probably knocked it down to like a 3 or a 4. Pretty significant. So I would go out later on that day, and I found that I was just much more relaxed, much more at ease, much more fluid, much more myself, much more natural, and just rolling. and easy, much more open. And then I would come away from those experiences actually feeling a little bit, I think, elated, a little excited, a little like proud of myself, because I'd actually made a change, and it was kind of this sense of victory or success in this area that had been kind of challenging for me. But here's where it got interesting. It wasn't just what, deeper on into the day where I was microdosing, but it was the day after or the next couple days after where I would find I was still much more forward, sociable, at ease, relaxed, friendly, and confident, and kind of just much more grounded in myself, where I didn't feel tension well up in my body. I didn't feel too caught up in how they were responding. Just very present, just very fluid and open with whoever it was I was interacting with. So that was after day 1. Day 2, I did the same thing, and I was already feeling a success from this first trial. So I didn't feel like it really brought me that much further on the second run, on the second day. But what I did find was that it cemented me more at like a 3. So instead of that wavering between like a 3 and a 4, 3 and a 5, I found I was like really solidly at like a 3. So there was still some social anxiety. I would still get awkward in social situations. I would still find myself feeling a little nervous about how I was coming across, or like, let's say I was like waiting in line to order something. I would still find myself ruminating a little bit on how is this person going to perceive me when I'm ordering, that kind of a thing. But it wasn't that much. It was still like a low level anxiety. And then on the third day, this is where it got interesting. I applied the same techniques, same stuff, and I found that it really dropped down to like a 1.5 or 2. So I wouldn't say it's totally gone. I still have a little bit there, but it dropped, and it's more or less stayed there. And I left a big gap of probably 4 days between the third session and the fourth session. And I found that even, a few days in, that my social anxiety just really had just stayed low. It stayed at like a 2. And I could just cruise through my days and generally not feel that worried about socializing or interacting or doing whatever I needed to do. It just kind of came effortlessly. Day 4, was my wrap-up day, and I found on day 4 it was harder to actually access the feelings of feeling anxious in the first place. So, quick little side note here, just to explain that last statement. When you're doing self-hypnosis, part of it is that you need to be able to access the problem in order to be able to change it. So if you're not lighting up the neural circuitry of the problem state, it's really hard to move into the solution state or the way you want to feel. So I found that I was actually having a difficult time by the fourth session even accessing the problem. So in other words, the problem is kind of slowly kind of fading away from being in my body. Like it's hard to remember that feeling of feeling anxious socially. But I was able to kind of pull up a bit of it and do the work on it. And then really, I would say at this point, I'm at like a 1.5 or a 2 or something like that. Like there's still a little bit there, but really I feel pretty solid. I feel pretty at ease in myself. And it's shocking. It's actually really strange and kind of fun to just go out and interact and do me. And it doesn't mean that I'm perfect or that I'm always smooth or that I'm always cool or any of that. It just means that my internal state when I'm out interacting with people is much more calm, much more relaxed, much more at ease. And I find that because I have a little more spaciousness in myself, I'm wittier, I'm sharper, I'm smoother. And even if people are a little, resistant or weird or have their own stuff going on, I find that I'm not walking away triggered by their reactions or their responses. I'm just much more centered, much more at ease with myself. So that's really cool. I mean, we're talking 2 hours total work on myself time spread out over 2 weeks, really. So half an hour a day for 4 days, which is nothing in the grand scheme of what it might cost, in terms of time and money doing like traditional therapy to get at the same problem. So do I feel like it sped things up? Yes. But I also think a fair chunk of that is just that hypnosis is a faster way to affect change. Do I feel like it deepened things? Yes, I do. Again, I think that's something that um, the psychedelics do on their own. So it's kind of hard to parse out what's what. But overall, I feel like this is a successful combination. But here's kind of where I think, here were the trouble points. Here are the sticking points that I found. For me, I kept having, in general, like I know I said by the fourth session, I was having a hard time pulling up the problem state. And I'd say that was true actually all four sessions. Because you're in a different state when you're microdosed, even if it's subtle, I found that it's really kind of challenging to pull up the problem. Like you just feel so good. You feel like you're just brimming with energy and optimism and creativity and strength, and you're just kind of popping, right? And because of that, it's actually a little harder to access the trigger or the issue or the problem that you're trying to get rid of. They call this state-dependent learning. So in other words, you might have heard of that kind of old adage that if you study drunk, you should take the test drunk, or if you study stone, you should take the test stone in school. The idea that our memory recall is very much tied to the state we're in. And so if you're, in a state where normally in order to feel that anxiety, you kind of have to be in a particular state, and then you've put yourself in a very different state through the microdose, you've successfully lifted yourself out of the state, but therefore it makes it harder to recall why you felt bad in the first place, what the triggers were in the first place, right? So I had a little bit of issue with that. And I think that this presents one of the central challenges to working with psychedelics for kind of personal growth purposes or therapeutic change or anything like that. Psychedelic therapy is that it can be difficult to access the problem enough to solve it, if you will. I mean, you can be like, I don't know if you've taken psychedelics, but if you have and you've done like a proper dose, if you reflect and ruminate on issues or challenges in your life, it can be very great on kind of philosophical level or thinking level, but it gives you kind of this bird's eye, disconnected, distant view of your issues most of the time, which is useful in the sense that it gives you insight and it gives you wisdom because you're outside of the problem, but it's not useful in the sense that you can't pull up the problem in order to begin to work with the problem. So I think that that's going to be an ongoing challenge with doing psychedelic therapy and psychedelic change work and psychedelic self-work. But I do think that there are ways to work around it. And I think one of the major workarounds is to really emphasize the lower end of a microdose in terms of dosage. So I found that in sessions 3 and 4, when I made sure that the dosage was smaller, that it was actually a little easier to create that change. Now, I know in terms of dosing and microdosing, in particular with psilocybin, that's tough because psilocybin is by its very nature an organic compound, and how much of the psilocybin is in different parts of the mushroom it's just really hard to accurately measure and get a clear lock on. But also it's just, there's your temperament, there's your physiology, there's where your body's energy is at for the day. It can be tough. It's hard to figure out what exactly is going to be the right dosage. So I think that that's one of the overarching challenges that we're going to find with this work. But that being said, when you can access it and then you can shift it with these techniques, you're going to end up feeling rapid, deep change. Like I knew when the neural circuitry rewired itself, I knew I could feel the change. And not only could I feel it, it felt very definitively like something had really lastingly shifted for me. And so to do that over a course of just a few sessions and have a problem that's been there, most of my adult life to just kind of evaporate and go away is amazing. I think that that's powerful. And I think that that's the promise that we have here, both with self-hypnosis and then also with psychedelics. I'm curious to play with others and explore this and help other people do the same thing. So, hit me up if you want to compare notes and talk about your work with this. I'm also curious what happens if maybe there's a better way of doing it, which is going for a more moderate dose and then on the days off doing the hypnotherapy work. So kind of a microdosing or medi-dosing, if you will, a medium dose, and then taking all of that, and instead of trying to do the change work while you're on the medicine, doing the change work the next day, and kind of alternating between days of medicine and insight and then days of change work and personal growth work, and seeing what happens to retrain the brain through that. So that's kind of what I got for now. Mostly this is just to say that I do think it's really possible, and I think there's a lot of promise here. It's something I'm going to continue to explore. And if you liked it, and if this is interesting to you, please click on the like button, subscribe, comment, interact. I'd love to hear from you, and help me grow my channel. This is brand new. This is new content, and this is a new channel. And I'll be talking a lot more about psychedelics and personal growth, because I think for me this is an area that I really want to explore, and I think shows a lot of promise. And since we kind of have this kind of opening with the legality, and there's kind of more acceptance, I guess you could say, it's something that I want to come out and talk more about and share more about, because I do have a lot of thoughts on the topic. I have a lot of experience both with psychedelics and with self-coaching and self-hypnosis and hypnotherapy and coaching others. If you resonate with this information, please comment, contact me, anything like that. I'd love to hear from you. If you want to talk to me about doing sessions, if coaching sessions appeal to you, hit me up for that too. I'd love to talk to you. But yeah, I just mostly want to share what I'm learning, and see what you guys think about it. So take care for now, be well, and I'll see you in the next video.